tell me something yesterday about it's your garden. Can you say that for others? Because I think that's something great.
So I talk a lot about that. This is my garden, and that means that I pick the flowers that go in there. That I pick what it looks like, what the vibe is, what acts there, and I have this: no rats, no fiends, no fools, nothing, no snakes in my garden.
So you have a beautiful garden.
I do. And I curate it, and I trim it, and I weed it, and I tend to it, and it's my space, and it is me. You know.
Your surroundings is you.
Yeah, for sure. And so now, you know, when you grow up the way I grew up, there are really normalized behaviors. There's this chaos and this violence and this toxicity that you live in that is so accepted. And you almost think that it's a natural part of how you have to live.
Yeah.
Until you kind of get a taste of that other side and you realize that's not how you have to live. And that every time you invite those behaviors or those attitudes or those mindsets, you're opening yourself up to a whole lot of other things that come with it. Yeah, absolutely. And so you have to say, actually, that ends here.
This is my garden.
It's my garden. You don't get to act like that here. I picked this. This is my rules. One of my passions was always law and politics, because I know that those are the things that change the policies that affect the institutions that I slipped through the cracks for.
So you went from being expelled from school for having the biggest drug stash in the South Island, it was in the newspaper, to literally going to do 2 degrees. Can you tell us what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so my whole life growing up, what I witnessed was obviously, you know, the pain and trauma within my own family, but that was always exacerbated by the intervention of the system. And I kind of, when I went to do my master's, and actually when I was doing my bachelor's, I used to say to the students and to the police, to my lecturers, that growing up, I had this idea that every single time the police knocked on my door, they'd go on my life. Every time they showed up, them, police, Oranga Tamariki, the education system, all of these institutions would come in and intervene in the worst ways possible. And they weren't helping in the right ways possible. After I left home, I also ended up on the youth benefit system, which was pretty useless. And I still kind of feel like that now. And so I think I thought, what can I do? How do I get somewhere that's going to make a difference? How can I actually change these systems? How can I make them work for people like me and people like my mum, people like my grandmother? How can I make this better? And I knew that out there that there was this world of highly qualified people making these rules who had not a clue what it was like on the ground. They had never been on that side of the fence, you know, and they were kind of sitting in their ivory towers, not having an idea of the impacts that they were making. So yeah, I thought, how qualified do I have to get to make a difference?
And you decided double degree and a master.
That's right. Yeah.
That's truly inspirational.
Which also hit the newspaper. It was really nice because my second graduation, they put me in the newspaper 10 years exact to the time I was in the newspaper for my expulsion. So it was a really full circle moment, and they wrote this article about how I had gone from being expelled from school to now graduating with my second bachelor's, and that was a really nice story. You
said to me the other day, fuck the system. What do you mean by that?
So I guess I kind of see the system as a really harmful thing for a lot of people, and this system is quite a broad way of putting it, but institutions that interact with vulnerable people don't do it well, and that's what I've experienced throughout my whole life. And I think that there's this dehumanizing processes when people get into large institutions and big systems like that kind of strips away the humanity of people. And when you're dealing with vulnerable people, people at risk, people who are in violence, people who are experiencing trauma, people will often say to me, and my own experience as well, that the process of getting justice was more painful than the event itself, you know? And I think that in itself is pretty explanatory of a system that is harming people.
So you own your own business, Space Junkie. Would you like to tell us all about that?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into that. I was doing a big tour of a lot of festivals in the North Island and really loved it. There's something about being at festivals where it's just this open freedom of expression. You can be whatever you like, you can wear whatever you like, and you can dance to amazing music with amazing lights. And then I came across this stall at one of the festivals in the North Island who was selling really, really cool clothing in in the festival, and at the time I had brought myself one of these huge LED light capes as a graduation gift to myself for my first bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And I was in love with it, really, really in love with it. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And everyone kept coming up to me and they were like, I'll give you $100 for that right now. And I didn't want to because it was mine.
Yeah.
But then I realized that there was this kind of gap where no one had this stuff. People wanted it, they wanted it at the festivals, and there was this gap. And so I started this business, and at the time I was working at MSD, and I was also in a pretty abusive relationship. It was pretty awful, and I was also going through my ACC sensitive claim at the same time, and I was falling apart on all fronts, really. Being in the institution, working for the welfare system, dealing with people who had had sexual abuse, going through ACC sensitive claims while also going through my own ACC sensitive claim at the same time, trying to keep it all together, going through extreme counselling and therapy, as well as working and starting this business. And through the ACC process, I had gotten with the psychologist who was making it very clear to me that my choice in relationships was related to my trauma and was a form of self-harm. And so through that, I managed to leave that relationship, but was still very much falling apart in my life. And so I leant into the business, and I talk about Space Junkie being the light to banish the dark. And what I do is I go and I sell beautiful, beautiful lights at beautiful festivals, and I get to connect with all these beautiful people and just have so much fun.
Gave you a purpose.
Yeah, something else to pour it all into. And I would really give that advice to anyone who's going through any sort of therapy, or especially the ACC sensitive claim, or who is, healing from something. Find somewhere to put it, because that can be, you can't carry all of that. You can't deal with it both physically and spiritually and psychologically. All of those things, you have to put it somewhere. Write it into a diary, put it into art, put it into a project, something, but don't hold it all. And that's kind of what Space Junkie was for me. It was this place where I could go and be someone else, be something else, and meet new people who didn't know the story that was attached to me. And that's kind of where I'm at now. A lot of people in my now life don't know where I come from or don't have that background, and that's kind of healing in itself as well, because I get to tell a new story, get to play a new character, and I get to be this other person that's really cool and confident and fun, has my own business, and that's such a contrast to what I grew up understanding about myself. There was also the kind of confidence you get from running your own business, doing your own thing, being out there, setting up my own stalls. And so I was really proud of myself, and it kind of gave me an idea of what I was capable of, and more than all the other things, because it was this own project that I had created. So it was really cool.
With your journey, what helped you to reclaim your power?
I can't say that it was any one particular thing. There's lots of different levels to healing and empowerment and all that kind of stuff, and it's more like putting bricks together rather than one kind of moment where I'm like, okay, I'm fixed. Because I don't think, as I said before, I don't think that you're ever truly free from those experiences, but there were definitely lots of chunks. Every time I follow through with something that I said that I would do, every time I completed a project or graduated or kind of put these bricks in place, things that no one can take away from me. So that's why I got qualified. That's a real important thing to me, because it was like, no one can take this from me. This is my education, this is my qualification, this is something that I have. And it's not measured by anything else other than my merit and the work that I've put into it. So kind of following through with your own goals and just being true to yourself is really the most important thing, because when you grow up in abuse, or even when you land in abuse as an adult, you lose this trust with yourself. You can't look at yourself in the mirror, and you have betrayed your own self. So that relationship, rebuilding that relationship with me, with myself, with little Maia, with anything that was internal, was always the most important thing.
What kind of impact do you hope your story has for other people listening today?
I think I just want people to know that there is a way out. As you know, what we've talked about before is, 1 in 3 women in New Zealand have these experiences, especially sexual abuse, but also the violence, the trauma, the addiction, the drug abuse, all of these things, they're quite prominent. Well, they are in my world. I'm not sure if everyone else out there has these, but they are in my world. When I've given speeches in the past about my experience, I talk about the 10 friends that I grew up with and the high school friends that I had. And, of 10 of us, 9 of us had experienced violence, 7 of us had experienced sexual abuse in some form. 4 of us have been, actually, you know, and that those stories have repeated throughout my life. And then this contrast in that is that 5 of us ended up with criminal charges. 10 out of 10 of us have some form of addiction, be it alcohol or marijuana or smoking cigarettes. And I am the only one of all of those girls to make it to university. And that always is so jarring to me, because when I went to university, I met friends who have all their friends at university that they grew up with, who have, you know, siblings who had graduated and parents who were lawyers, and these different worlds, whole completely different world. And it was so amazing to me. And so I always try and just explain to people that you don't have to do this. You don't have to go to university. You don't have to get qualified. But you are just as worthy as anyone who's there. You're just as intelligent. You're just as beautiful and just as smart. And you can have that life if you want to. And that's kind of the message that I want to send. You know, that those barriers that make you feel like you don't belong there are exactly why you should be there. But also you don't have to be there.
This will be our last question for the day for you. Maia, what are you dreaming about for your future now?
So I often say to the universe, put me in the best place to do the most good for the most people. And it was really funny, because after I said that, I left my job and ended up home, which I thought was really strange. And I was like, what's happening? But the message was that the best thing I can do is pour it into myself and keep going as far as I can and as high as I can. And then from there, I also say that my waka is large, and I built a big boat so I can take as many people with me. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a big boat, strong foundations, reach as far as wide as I can, to build connections with people like you, and see what we can do with it. See if we can fill the gaps. See if we can fix some problems. And man, sometimes when it all gets too big, I think even if you just save yourself, that is enough. You know, everything on top of that is extra. And so so there's no particular goal, but there is a general vision of what we're doing. And I get really emotional talking about it, as you can see, because it really matters to me. But as long as I can get to a great place and help a lot of people, that's my main goal.
So thank you, beautiful woman, for being here today. Your intelligence has radiated out of our tent. I'm so grateful. I hope you guys can process everything she's saying, and if you're going through something similar, make a move. You got this. ACC claims, sensitive claims, if you weren't aware, you can do this years later down the track.
Anytime.
Yeah, it's something that she's given me the courage that I'm going to go through with now. And yeah, sending so much love. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So much love.
I'm excited to see what our future brings.
I can't wait to see what we can do. Yeah, we got you.